Do you really know just how heavy 24 hours of metal music really is? About the weight of your mobile phone. Download our free andrewhogue.com iPhone and Android apps now. That way, you'll never be far away from us. This is Andrew Hogue for andrewhogue.com, Australia's only dedicated 24/7 rock metal radio station. I'm now graced with the presence of my good buddy and drum god as well, Mr. Paul BOSTAPH from Slayer. We're going to get a little bit of an update on how things are progressing in the studio and everything else that's happening in his rock and roll world. G'day, Paul. Welcome to andrewhogue.com.
Hey, thanks for having me. Did you just call me a drum god?
Well, yeah, I think that's a correct assumption.
No, I'm just kidding around, man. That's funny. Anyway. Go ahead, man. What's happening?
You've always been a humble guy, Mr. BOSTAPH.
Man, that's just funny.
I guess there's some good advice out there for all these up-and-coming bands out there who, you know, want to take on the world and their egos are well and truly inflated. I mean, obviously you've been in the game for such a long time and the amount of work that you've created up until now is just astonishing. What keeps you grounded? What keeps you on that sort of level of just remaining humble, like I said at the start?
You know, I don't know. I guess it's just the way I was brought up, for one. But it just, I never really liked people who just had big egos, and you know, those kind of personalities are hard for me to be around because I don't feel that it's realistic for me. So I don't ever want to be that kind of person. Never did. So it's just, and you know, I guess it's the other thing too is like, the harder your ego drives you and the more you think you're better than everybody else and whatever else that is, the harder you're going to fall when some new kid up and comer or anybody else, knocks you off your game, So, yeah, I think it's just, maybe it's a blue collar mentality that I have. I got that from my dad and the way I grew up, just work hard, work hard no matter how, work hard. If you work hard, the guarantee for working hard will be a level of success. Whatever success that is, it doesn't matter because if you work hard and you want to get better, just work hard. So I guess that's the thing, and everything else just really doesn't matter to me. So I've been surrounded by people who weren't very cool my whole life because they had an ego or whatever, and a lot of those people aren't playing music anymore, and they never made it as far as I did. And not that I ever wanted that to happen to them, but it was just, I think that their ego got in the way. And that's the lesson I learned from that.
Well, that's one thing people aren't aware, that the ego is the false self, and it does take over. But again, talking about this sort of topic just off the bat, we look at today's society, and especially the sort of instant gratification thanks to the wonderful world of the internet. How do you feel when certain people would, or even fans, see you in such a godlike sense of A, playing ability, and B, the life you actually lead by doing what you do for a living? Most would ultimately think that you are on that inflated sort of ego world because, unfortunately, there are several people in your world that are like that and have kind of stayed that way for a long time, that tend to give humble people like yourself a bit of a bad name. And it's interesting when some people would go away and go, wow, he's so down to earth. I expected him to be an asshole or whatever, which, as you know, there are some folks out there that have given, it a bad rap. But how do you feel about the sort of perceptions that people just think, you're this larger-than-life guy, and then when they meet you, they're kind of, not to say let down, but just, again, it probably blows the illusion to them that you're just another person that's worked hard?
Well, I don't know. I guess I guess the best way to put it is I don't think anybody should put anybody on a pedestal like that. I have my heroes that I grew up with too. And I, over the years, realized by reading articles from them and listening to what they have to say, I realized that some of these guys just worked really hard to get where they were at. Ultimately we all have to have confidence, and some of that can be driven from your ego. But you have to keep it in check. So, I mean, I guess, from the perspective of people who meet you and they're just like, man, you're so cool. I expected to be something different. That's really cool that they think that. But it also makes me wonder, boy, who'd you talk to before you talk to me? So I get, look, I mean, the bottom line for me is, as a musician and being lucky enough to do what I do in terms of, having the opportunity to play in front of these people, to people who care about your performance and being entertained for an evening by you. I don't know. I don't know. Without the people who come to see us play or buy the records, bottom line, you are just another guy. So you really, the bottom line is we're all there together. When I play a show, I'm there with everybody else. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I typically, just as an example, I don't use a fan when I play unless it's the most extreme situation ever. So I don't use a fan because nobody else in the audience gets to use one. You know what I mean? Like, I want to experience what you're experiencing. I mean, as best I can, because I'm not going to get bumped into by 50 people trying to mosh when I'm playing drums. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
But it's just, I want to be. It's kind of like, I like we're all in it together for that evening. It kind of makes the experience better for me.
Well, that's probably the first musician I've ever spoken to who's actually had that attitude. No one's really ever said that before. So again, that's what sets you apart from the rest. But let's delve into what you do on the in the office on a daily basis, and that is playing again with Slayer. Now we know that the album recording is underway, and I know there's not too much of insight you can let out entirely, but I guess maybe give us a little bit of a rough guide on how it's all going. I know that we've obviously heard the new track Implode, and how's it shaping up as much as you can give?
It's shaping up really well. I've been away, been working on vocals now, but I'm finally getting the opportunity to, I'm getting some tracks back that have the rhythm guitar is tracked and bass guitar tracked, and they're still working on vocals, but it's going to be heavy. It's going to be heavy, and unfortunately we don't have Jeff with us anymore. But Carrie's really stepped up to the plate, and it's going to be a heavy record. It's still going to be a Slayer record.
I mean, looking at the lineup, especially your work with Gary over the years and friendship, I mean, you must have slotted straight in with the guys again. But obviously, as we mentioned, Jeff not being around, unfortunately, is still a tragic loss. But a lot of people know what to expect being Slayer. But sometimes I'm finding, I mean, I guess you can't please every single fan, but there are certain fans who just want to cement a band in a permanent era and want to keep them there, and anything they do beyond is just not good enough. But it's almost like bands like Slayer and even AC/DC, example, they just can't win. People know what they're going to get, but they complain about it, and they say it's the same old.
Right.
But yet they delve into a bit of experimentation, and people were in uproar. Look at Diabolos de Musica. Everyone was saying that, oh my God, Slayer's gone new metal when that came out, when it was still a Slayer record. When you go into the writing process to write Slayer music, I mean, you're playing Slayer music, so that's all that should matter, really, between the four of you.
Well, yeah. I mean, people, I mean, look, I mean, with every artist, you don't want to paint a picture. An artist doesn't want to paint the same picture every time.
Mm.
I mean, if you painted a picture, as somebody who painted, and you painted a picture of an apple, and that was everybody's favorite picture that picture of that apple is my favorite picture. So then the artist goes, aha, I'm just going to paint that picture of the apple every time. Well, I mean, then there you go. You're looking at the same thing all the time. And so, like you said, the bottom line is, as an artist, you have to please yourself, I believe Slayer never wrote records. I believe a lot of bands don't write records to please who they think their listening audience is. I think that the good bands, the good songwriters write songs for themselves, and sometimes you're gonna hit a home run. Sometimes you're gonna have that pinnacle record like Rain and Blood, or Seasons in the Abyss, South of Heaven, records like that. There are records they did with me that I really love, but bottom line is, you look at say Pink Floyd. I always use this example, and I think it's classic. Pink Floyd writes Dark Side of the Moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
After Dark Side of the Moon, they got every record they came out with was just trashed by the critics and trashed by the fans. Why? Because Dark Side of the Moon was such a landmark record, and you still hear those songs today, that everything else paled by comparison to the music they wrote on that record. And what was it? I forget how many years later, 10 years more or more. I don't remember how many years. I forget. I used to know. And then they came out with The Wall. All of a sudden, oh my God, Pink Floyd's back. Well, they never went away. If you listen to the album Animals, it's a great record. And a lot of people may not be Pink Floyd fans, so they may not know what I'm talking about. But I guess what I'm talking about is, Jobless Music, for example. People think that's a new metal record. There are some attempts to try something different on that record. I still think it's good, myself. Not because I played on it, because I do. But Bitter Peace is a great record, great song.
Yep.
People overlook. I mean, I hear people say, "Oh, that record." Well, you know what? Bitter Peace, one of my favorite songs Jeff ever wrote. So it's just kind of one of those things where, you're never gonna, God, if you write a great record every time and people love you every time, you have an unprecedented career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, it's one of those things where, if it's true that you have to crawl before you walk, walk before you can run, and then when you start running, every once in a while you're going to stumble, figure out how to gain your balance. Well, when a band stumbles, everybody wants to go, okay, those guys are done. Everybody wants that. You know what I mean? There's some people don't. I shan't say everybody, but there are people out there that just want to see it. You know what I mean? But bottom line is, those are the same people that when they're on their cell phone or texting may have tripped over a crack in the sidewalk, and when nobody was looking, went, oh, good, nobody was looking.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for us, people in bands, we do it when everybody's looking. So you basically what you got to do is just got to, you got to write music for yourself and enjoy what you do. Because look, I mean, we get to play music. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be playing music and going on tour with, in my opinion, a legendary heavy metal band. And I actually was lucky enough to do with a couple, Exodus and Testament. So I mean, I consider myself lucky. So I don't know. I love what I do, and I love playing drums. So it's just kind of one of those things where, I don't think I've ever done a record I hate, and I'm lucky to say that. So,
well, we're certainly looking forward to hearing the forthcoming Slayer record. Now, not to dredge up too much baggage, but, it's pretty obvious it's out there at the moment with, Dave Lombardo's, version of why he left the band and all that sort of stuff, and finding a little bit disrespectful that he refers you to as the other guy. But I read that, he said most of the drum parts on the latest record, have been written for the last, 2 or 3 years. I mean, what has changed as far as you stepping in? I mean, is it kind of Kerry kind of said, all right, this is how it's going to be, or you just put your own stamp on the structure your way to regarding the latest songs?
Kerry and Kerry has a specific way he writes, and it really hasn't changed throughout the years. And that's the one thing about Kerry and respectfully Jeff that I knew how they wrote. With Kerry, both Kerry and Jeff have a very strong idea of what they want the drums to do when they come in. Kerry, when he comes in, he shows you an arrangement. He's going to go, I want the kick here, snare here, or I want this kind of beat here or that kind of beat here, and or double bass here, or you just kind of, after a while you figure it out and you interject your different ideas into the parts, and you certain drum fills here. Maybe there's a part of the song where he's like, I don't really know what I want the drums to do here. So do whatever you do here. It's kind of one of those things where over the years, like I've written with Kerry so many times. First album I did with him was Divine Intervention, and Kerry and I roomed together, So, I mean, I got to know how he did things, over the years pretty well. So when Kerry shows me something, I know he's got him in his mind what he wants, So, it's not that there's not a lot of room for the drummer to do anything in the music, but you have to know how to color it, but certainly the songs are written, at least, brought in a very strong format, the before like you really get a chance to dig in, and maybe arrangements may change a little bit here or there, but that's one of those things where you just got to get in the room.
So it's not a direct replacement, as Dave is saying about his drum parts on those demos that he did with Kerry back in 2011. You're pretty much adding your sort of stamp within the confines of Kerry's writing and, your style as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, when I like I said before, like I know what, I know what, the structure, the structure is, and I know what to change and what not to change. And, it's a tough nut to crack there with, I'm not going to call Dave the other guy. He's Dave Lombardo.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm a little, people tell me all the time about, hey, he said this, he said that.
Yeah.
And, it's like one of those things, man. It's like, after a while, you just got to I just want to play drums, man. That's all there is to it. In terms of, the new record, I heard that Dave wrote all the parts on the new record for the drums. It's funny that I didn't see him anywhere around when I was working on the music. So it's one of those things where I get where he's coming from, but man, it's like there's two sides to every story.
Yep.
And I'm like getting a little tired of hearing his, So now I'm just going to leave it at that because, I don't take it personally.
Well, it's always been like that since you joined Slayer back in, 1992, when everyone has this constant comparison, those stupid debates, who's better. That's never going to change. It's the same as, I guess, R.I.P. Bon Scott with Brian Johnson, sort of who prefers a certain era. So to me, I just say save that for the forum trolls and, continue playing drums. Now, when can we expect the new Slayer record to be actually out for the masses to wrap their ears around and do windmills?
Wow. I like the way you put that, wrap their ears around and do windmills. You know what? I don't know what the specific date is yet. So if I say something, it'll be put in cement. But it'll be next year.
Yep.
I believe. And probably early next year. A specific due date yet. I mean, I'd be probably stepping outside of myself to say anything. It just depends on, how it progresses with the guys and everything else in terms of where they're at in the creative process. So, I mean, it's going to be next year, and it'll be early next year as far as I know at this point. So, but let's not leave that set in stone yet, because things do change. But that's what I believe it'll be.
Now, of course, being back in Slayer, how do you feel playing Slayer music again? I know it's been, a while now since you've been back, but, it would have been a certain period of adjustment, but now writing new Slayer music as well. I mean, it's just like putting on old shoes. You feel charged for the music that you're about to unleash to the masses when it's available?
It's funny because, playing the style of music, playing Slayer's music especially, it's kind of, I've played in other bands after I left Slayer, and nothing delivers the way I like. None of it delivers the way I like to play drums. So this style really appeals to, this band, the intensity of it, the kind of music. It's everything that I love in metal, and everything I love about, I'm also an athlete too. It's everything I love about being an athlete. It takes music and athletics, throws it all together, and it's challenging. I mean, I had to become a better drummer to join this band. I had to work really hard, or I never would have, made it past the first audition. So, and that's a testament to Slayer. It's a testament to Lombardo. Look, I'll say this. And I've always said it, it's not fucking easy to play Dave's parts.
Yeah.
Dave is a great drummer. I do the best I can, to do his parts justice. And, it's like, that's the challenge. When I was in Exodus, I had to, fill in for Tom Hunting. And, that's not easy. Tom has a wacky style. He's amazing. So, I always say this, Tom Hunting of Exodus gets such little respect for how good he is.
Oh, big time.
And he's one of the legendary thrash metal drummers of all time, in my opinion.
Yep.
Dave is Dave, but Tom Hunting should be put right up there with him because Tom is amazing. So.
Well, there's great access to your drumming and, of course, videos on your website, paulbostaffdrums.com, which is great because it certainly gives a lot of fans, especially not just drummers, but music fans who don't really get to see much behind the kit, so to speak. I know that we did post a couple of videos of your performances behind the kit for on the Andrew Hogue Radio Facebook page, and just said, this is the best seat in the house, and a lot of people was certainly flawed by that kind of view, because again, as we know, drummers are always shoved up the back. So of course, as we mentioned about the website, now of course you do have a Facebook page too for fans to interact and check out what's happening with you, which is Paul BOSTAPH Drums Official, and all the other world of social media. I mean, it certainly has forced a lot of musicians into that sort of realm. I know that recently though, Jason Newsted has completely opted out of social media, for whatever his reasons are, but I think, how are you finding that whole transition from being, of course, a career musician pre-internet to now where, is too much just too much? I mean, some bands go over the top trying to connect with their fans. Do you think that bands have to give fans every detail of their daily lives, of what coffee they drank and what time they took a piss?
No, I don't think that, I don't even think fans want to know that, to be honest with you. I think social media is interesting because I'm just now I've been off and on social media, and that's because I'm kind of a private person. I'm like, man, it's like all I see is people like posting pictures of what they ate for dinner. I'm like, that just doesn't appeal to me.
Yep.
Why do, and then, unless I feel it's something interesting, which, I look at my life as these are the things I do, and, I don't know I can't manufacture something I think is interesting in my life. It's like what I'm interested in. It's like, so it's kind of like one of those things where I just got to get used to putting something out there that I feel comfortable with, that I feel like if I was, say for instance, if this was social media was around in the 70s, which it wasn't, I would have loved to have seen what Alex Van Halen was doing today. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I never had the opportunity, and maybe the opportunity to maybe one person gets a response back, hey, from that individual. If I would have had, one of my favorite drummers of all time, he reached out to me and say, hey, thanks for this compliment. Just one thing. I go, oh my God, this guy got back in touch with me, So I don't know. I think to a certain degree, social media is, I don't know, it's going to be one of those things where I think it's going to go by the wayside like everything else. I could be wrong, but I think people are just going to get too much of it, or it's going to grow into something else. But right now, it's one of those things. I guess I never thought of it as a necessary evil. I think the way I'm looking at it is now for myself, if you've really got something you want to share with people, then you do. And I also think that there's a lot of bad things out there in terms of not just social media, but the internet, because people have no accountability.
Yep.
When I grew up, if certain people said things about me on the streets where I grew up, if you said it to my face, certain things, you'd have got a knuckle sandwich.
Yeah.
That's how it was. You don't talk trash about people. Unless you got something to say to me, you come up to my face. That's not the world we live in. People are cowards behind their computers, or they're brave. I'd say they're brave behind their computers. That makes them a coward. Look, if you can't say something like that person was in the room, don't say it. So I feel, I don't blame certain individuals for opting out of it, because it just after a while, you're like, man, what is this? It's just a bunch of crap anyway. Other people utilize it. They say you have to have thick skin. So, it just depends on how thick your skin is. If you have thick skin, you can deal with it. Other people, it becomes social drama, So, it's an interesting question. I don't know if there's not a right answer to it. I just think it's, shoot, there's idiots driving cars out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there can be idiots on the internet.
Yep. Well, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, Paul. We can get you to choose one of your favourite Slayer tracks of all time, and also one of your tracks from a previous band you once played in that you look back on fondly as part of your monstrous metal legacy.
Holy crap. Let's see. One of my favorite Slayer tracks.
Yep.
You know what? Let's do Bitter Peace. And, that's, like I said, that's one of my favorite it's what, Jeff's written a lot of great songs. One of my favorite Jeff Hanneman songs is, you know, we were working on the music so much, and I never heard the lyrics. When I finally heard the lyrics, I was like, wow, it blew me away. So, as a tribute to Jeff, that's, Bitter Peace. And, anything from any other band, I don't know, I guess so many, Forbidden's been, 26 years ago, Forbidden Evil came out.
Yep.
It would be appropriate if I did that, but I don't know. I just keep wanting to do off Shovelhead Kill Machine. So, how about, that's a tough one. So many. How about Death Amphetamine?
I was just about to say that, actually. Yeah, I think that's still a killer Exodus record. I mean, a lot of people talk about, Zetro back in the group, and I think Rob did some amazing work with Exodus over the years, and that certainly is one of my favourite Exodus records that also featured you on drums as well. So we can certainly play that for you, Paul. And again, it's always a pleasure to, talk to you all about what's happening in your world, and of course, forever humble as always.
Well, dude, thanks for having me, and dude, and always good talking to you, Andrew.
No worries. Let's check out some Slayer and some Exodus right now here on andrewhogue.com.